Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another awesome episode of Real Life Radio. Today we are talking about making harmony in the chaos of real life, and my gosh, we could not possibly have a more authentic Walking Our Talk episode today. I'm Desiree Mills, and I'm broadcasting live from the car dealership where my truck is in for repairs. And Jerry's having some interesting issues on her end, so it's bound to be a great show.
Oh, yes,
and here
indeed.
I am. I'm desperately trying to log in to find the phone number to invite our callers to call in, so I don't know it off by heart, and I've dropped it. So, Jerry, I'm going to have to thank you for being here and pass the torch on you to let our listeners know what number to call in if they'd like to contribute. And certainly we always encourage folks to join the chat room and put their input in, and we do our best to share that online. So, Jerry, if you wouldn't mind, my friend.
You bet. Yes, we would love to hear from you. So please do call in with your questions and comments. The number to call is 818-514-1045. And then just press 1 to indicate that you'd like to speak with us, and we will bring you in. So,
thank you.
Yeah. You are most welcome. Yeah, we've been having all sorts of technical glitches this morning, or this afternoon, yeah. It's not even Monday morning anymore. Anyway, I'm feeling really blessed today. I'm really, really excited about this show because it just happens to be with two of my favorite ladies in the whole wide world. And so I just know we're gonna rock it. It's gonna be so awesome. It's gonna be just so real. And like Des said, a conversation that seems to be very needed right now in our lives, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners, since we're all connected. So, yeah, let me just introduce our guest for today. Her name is Carol Lewitsky. I always want to Lewitsky. And she is just the most beautiful light, amazing lady. I had the privilege to meet her not that long ago at an event, an awakening event that Jennifer Huff put on in Calgary. And this lady lit up the room. I noticed Carol when she walked in. She's absolutely stunningly beautiful, and she just glows from the inside out. And, and I kept thinking, wow, I've got to go and talk to her. I've got to get to know her. And lo and behold, at the break, everything just works out perfectly because the person who was sitting next to me stood up and decided to sit somewhere else. And then Carol stood up and came and sat by me. And I was just like, oh, my gosh, this is so awesome. This is her. This is the one, right? So it's always been one of my gifts to just, like, recognize the light, the people that just kind of light up the room. And Carol is one of those. And so then we got to do this really powerful exercise together and, sharing some of ourselves with one another, and then looking each other in the eyes and just saying, I see you. And it was, we were both crying. It was just awesome. And never really looked back. I absolutely love Carol. And despite what she says, I think she's like Superwoman. I cannot wait to hear all her fabulous tips. She has 8 kids of her own, 4 of which she homeschooled for 10 years. She's an energy healer. She does amazing Reiki. Really assisted me just doing like a remote Reiki healing when I was going through some rough times. And she's also got a massage therapy business. She's also training as an awakening coach with Jennifer Huff. All this with 8 kids, and she looks like a supermodel. Like I don't quite get it, but she's the first to admit that she doesn't have it all figured out, that she has and does struggle, but just super authentic, super real. I know, and has so much to share. She's extremely intuitive, and just has some amazing gifts to share with us all today. So thank you so much, Carol, for being here.
Wow, thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Desiree. I'm so excited to be having this conversation with you both today. Wow, Jerry, thank you. That's very heartwarming comments that you made. Of course, my feelings are very mutual, right back at you. And I'm excited to have this conversation today with the both of you, because I know you're both so real. And, as the show was opening up, I was dancing to the music. So it might sound a little bit out of breath.
That's nice.
I was really getting ready for this and excited to share. I think that it doesn't get any more simple than just being who I am. I am definitely not someone that would ever think that I could have anything figured out, but I do know that the experiences I have been so rich, and to have these 8 souls in my life to constantly be teaching me and reminding me of who I am and what I came here to do is something that's priceless. I just wake up grateful every day for it. So I don't know if you want me to say where I come from is like a very simple upbringing. Nothing extraordinary in my childhood. I just came from a small town south of Winnipeg, little French town, and I grew up with 4 siblings, and I was the middle one, so number 3. And one thing that a lot of people growing up, my parents told me that I had this love for people, this passion for just even complete strangers. I could just fall in love with people that would cross my path, and I just grew such deep attachment to their soul, obviously looking beyond the outside and just being able to see the potential of people. And so at quite a young age, I felt a really strong pull towards becoming a psychologist. I just naturally could see people would come to me for questions or just talk to me about their problems, and my mom, with the best of intentions, can discourage me from going down that road, because she said your heart is too big and you'll get too attached to these situations, and then it'll hurt you. So of course, just being a mom wanting to protect their child, that's not the path I took. But it's interesting, when you're called to something so deeply, life will keep presenting it, and so you can run, but you can't hide. It'll just keep coming at you. And so I often think of my own little family as a microcosm of the macrocosm, and that between 8 personalities and 8 characters and 8 beautiful souls that have come here with unique missions and unique callings, I have the mini practice that I could ever, the best that I could ever dream of. And it exposes me to so much of what makes me passionate, and that is people, and just seeing the dynamics between the 8 is just completely keeps me guessing and makes me feel in awe, just observing their interactions, observing the dynamics between all of them. So it's cool how things turned out that way. But yeah, at 19, I had been seeing quite a few specialists, because my cycle was just very, very screwed up for years. And the last doctor that ended up doing some extensive testing on me said, you are not ovulating and you are producing no progesterone, so you probably won't ever be able to have children.
Wow.
So at that age, I think I had always been the type of person to question. Even at a young age, I would just question things. I was very curious, and I questioned, and sometimes by authority figures, this wasn't seen as a convenient thing. And so
I can imagine.
So I remember being shushed off and are told that's disrespectful. We don't ask questions, or we don't assume that this could be wrong. If so-and-so have taught you this, then you believe and you don't question. And so I definitely, to fit in and to survive, learned to just quiet that inner voice that just wanted so much to come out and be heard and understand more about life. I was just very inquisitive. But so when I was given this by a professional, a doctor that tells me I can't have children. I was given the opportunity in that moment to choose, am I just going to believe because he's an expert, he knows better than me, or am I just going to trust life and accept whatever life presents me? Not fight or resist, but just be open, because what is the truth? I mean, how do you even define that? So that's where that was at. And so my husband and I decided before having children to do a year of missionary work. We went to Jamaica and spent some time out there. We had been married a year and a half, and we were 2 weeks into our mission when I found out I was pregnant. So that was a really interesting turn of events, because we completely abandoned ourselves to Providence. We both quit our jobs. We just trusted this inner pull, this inner calling to go do missionary work. And it was risky. It was, humanly speaking, it wasn't a wise decision money-wise or anything like that, but we just trusted it. And then this first child comes into our life, and we were just, of course, felt so grateful. And so that was the beginning of our family. And so we lived with my in-laws for a few years after we came back from the missionary mission, so my husband could really establish himself in his job. And they had 3 foster children with extreme psychological, emotional, sexual, physical abuse. And that, again, was just like an amazing opportunity for me to be close to that being exposed to that kind of life that these children were given and how it impacted them, and give me, perception or just an appreciation for their life. And then a different type of parenting, which is foster parenting, is just another form of parenting, because I believe there's many, many ways of being a parent.
Yes. So true. Wow. Well, way to show that, doctor, hey? 8 children later. Also you.
Well, if anything, it showed me that there's some higher power that's guiding these kind of things, that we think as human beings that we're so in control and we can predict and we can decide and it's such an illusion at the end of the day. I mean, we have control over the way we feel and the way we act, but outside of that, it's... Yeah,
for sure. So why do you think you've been blessed with 8 children, and why do you think any of us, I know you have, I know I have lots to say about lots of things, but, the take on why our children are here?
Well, and that's where being a new mom and seeing how they came already with their own personality. They come here with so much that we didn't contribute to, and it made me realize that these little beings are here because with me under our care, because they need to be fed, they need love, they need shelter. But outside of that, I mean, I think it was the 10 years of homeschooling that really, really shed light on that for me, because I obviously was the teacher in this relationship. Teacher and the child is the student. But it did not take me very long to realize that most of the time roles were, not that I was the child, but they became the teacher. And what they were bringing to me was incredible, because I was 24/7 with them. If you're going to be triggered or pushed to your limit, it's going to happen. And I did the homeschooling thing to begin with. Again, that was an interior pull or push to do it. It was nothing logical where I sat down and did pros and cons. I literally felt this presented in my life. I met a family that had a daughter. She was 13. I kind of observed, and they told us about it. I didn't even have kids at the time, but I thought, I think that's what I'm called to do. A lot of times when you have these real strong intuition of doing things, you won't even know why, until it could be years after that you actually can see the benefit or why that was the most optimal thing for you to do in your life. Because I don't believe there's a right way and a wrong way. I just think there's suboptimal and optimal. So something that could really bring the best in the situation or not so much. And for us, just having such a big family and me being, I'm a very driven person, and to knowing inside, I actually knew way before I even met my husband, I felt I would have a big family. So even when this doctor told me, I think it didn't sound real to me. It didn't resonate because I was like, but I already know I'm going to have a big family. But then I kept my mind open because I thought maybe I meant to adopt, which would have been just as wonderful, because I've seen so many times people adopt children and the child looks like a spitting image of the adoptive parents. Mm-hmm. How does that happen?
Yeah, awesome.
It's obvious to me that you're lined up with that soul, whether you give birth to them or you adopt them or you foster or you big brother, it's just, if you follow that calling, you're aligned and there's a deep connection that goes beyond blood relation.
So, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So
that really resonates. Yeah, I like that big time, because there is certain, I have friends who have kids that I just feel extremely drawn to, and it's interesting. I'm not saying, because they're actually my kids, but I believe that there is a certain set of characters that, we join with, or that we're supposed to play out our journey, our lifetime with. And it's, when I listen to my intuition, that's really where I know, like when it resonates, or when it just, you feel that tug towards certain people. I mean, there's 7 billion of us on the planet, but only a handful of them are in our lives, and I think there's a reason for that, right?
Absolutely. I totally agree. And that's why even having 8 children myself, I don't consider them my children. Like, I do all that I can to be the best parent that I can for them, but there's a lot of other people in their lives that are playing a parenting or a soul connection role with them. And in fact, one thing that I choose quite with care and inspiration is godparents when they're born, because I feel that connects the child to whoever I choose or we choose. It connects them spiritually. And it's kind of a spiritual parenting that they have with this child. And the really cool thing is, in all 8 of my kids, there's either an uncanny physical resemblance with their godparents, even if they're not related, or a character, like their characters are very similar. So you just can't deny the connection that there is between all of us. And with homeschooling, it definitely brought to light areas in myself that I wanted to work on. So when I talk about them being my teacher, that's what I'm talking about, is that they would, and luckily they didn't all do it at the same time, but they would take turns to trigger me in one way, shape, or form. And I could either try to control the child or face the situation and look inside of myself and say, why is this upsetting me so much? Why is this making me feel so out of control or frazzled? And with time, I just realized, wow, they're not consciously doing it, but on a deep soul-to-soul contract that we have with each other, they're bringing to me what I've asked them to bring to me so that I can grow as a person.
Oh, I love that soul-to-soul contract with one another. I think that's so true. I think we have that with our kids, and I've often said to people that I believe that, they're out there searching for their soulmates, and if you have children, then you've got a soulmate right there, like with your kids. Yeah. There is that contract for sure. And yeah, I'd love for you to expand on that a little more. Do you have any, like maybe an example of a situation where you got triggered and kind of were forced to, look at things, or chose to look at things in a different way than a lot of parents do when they react?
There's some simple stuff that happened at the beginning. Like, let's say one of the things that I loved about the idea of homeschooling was that I could bring out their individuality and that knowing they would all be very sensitive characters, because both my husband and I are highly sensitive, that I wanted them to be able to shine and fully be who they are and not feel pulled to fit in and have to compromise those parts of themselves or change. So a very simple lesson that came up is that my second had a very unique choice of like style with the way he wore his clothes. Like he'd like hike up his pants and like tighten his belt, and he just it just didn't look like styling or put together. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm turning into the bully at school that's like going to tell him that's not cool enough looking. You know what I mean? Like it made me realize, like, well, do I love him or for what he looks like on the outside? And it's just a simple illustration, but that was one that stands out for like my own looking inside myself. And then other things would be more like one of my children is very outspoken and just challenges, more so when he was a bit younger, but he would challenge anything I would say, and it would push my buttons, and I'd be like, why can't you just listen when I ask you to do something? And why he would just push me, and then I would have to reevaluate, am I just trying to control him because that's more convenient for me? Am I trying to what I came to realize is just it was stirring up fear in me, like fear of, if I don't get this under control now, imagine how he's going to be later.
Don't we hear that a lot? Yeah.
Yeah, wow. And fear of looking like a bad parent, fear of him being disrespectful, and it would bring up it was always fear-based. Anything that for me triggered me was fear-based. And other examples would maybe be like tone of voice that one of them would use with me. And it's so easy to be like, don't use that tone with me. But if I actually recorded myself, I'd hear that I can sound like that myself with them. So yeah, I think where I'm at is just realizing that teaching them per se, like this is what I expect of you, this is what I want to see. I would like to have some respect, like lay all the expectations and the rules and what you want to get at the end of the day out of them is worthless if you're not doing it yourself. And it doesn't mean being perfect, but this is an example I'll give is, let's say I would tell my kids that they need to respect each other between each other as siblings, and then and not be abusive of one another, like in expectations, but then I myself am not taking care of myself as a mom. It would speak louder if I'm staying balanced and taking care of myself. Like when I ended up going to Peru in October, and my one daughter, 12 years old at the time, she's one that would be clingier when I'm gone for a long period, or that's the longest I've ever been gone. But if I'd be gone for a weekend, she'd call or text me and say, I miss you, because I have 6 boys and she only has one sister, and so she feels outnumbered with testosterone in the house. So she relies on me for the feminine side. So if anyone I thought would guilt me or make me feel bad for being on this trip, it would have normally been her. But she wrote me one email the whole time I was gone, and she said, Mom, I'm so happy you did this for yourself. You so deserve it.
Wow. Yeah, and what a powerful thing to show them, right? That self-care, and that, like this is something that has been kind of a continual I guess a challenge for me, and I had a friend just the other day echo it to me again, is like I was kind of in this state of overwhelm and just feeling like my life is kind of out of balance, and I got to do this or I got to do that, and then this and that, and just, you know, kind of like that chaos feeling. And you know, I so badly want to live my dreams, and you know, so I want this business because it's what I'm passionate about. It's like my soul calling, but then I have these 3 young kids and the housework, and you know, so trying to balance it all. And I've been told by a few people, like my family especially, but then this friend, he just kind of looked at me and he said, well, when your kids are this age, really, you're not supposed to have a life. Like, your job is to parent those kids, and you know, and right. do the cooking, cleaning, the housework, and like you're obviously in overwhelm. And I mean, I know he was kind of half joking, but at the same time, it kind of hit because it's been something that a few people have said to me, and when I've, you know, talked to them about what their dreams are, they're like, well, I mean, I'll think about that when my kids are grown up. And I'm like, but don't you want to show your kids what that looks like to go after your dreams? But it is hard to balance, and I do have guilt around it, and my house does get completely, you know, like completely out of control. So, and I know you have your own business and you do the Reiki, and I mean, how do you do it? And what would your advice be what do you think when people say things like that, like to kind of, you know, put your life on hold, and or maybe make that into your life, like, you know, are my priorities screwed up?
I can say I've experienced both, because I definitely did the hardcore, like, forgetting that I even exist parenting for years. And on one hand, the homeschooling helped because that really stimulated my mind and kept me interested, because I was constantly being challenged intellectually. So that was probably my saving grace. As challenging as that could look to be of a task to homeschool, at one level I was doing 4 grade levels. That year I probably should have decided I was ready to retire, but I was stubborn and stuck in my ways, and maybe attached a little bit to the identity of being this, wow, you have 6 kids and you're homeschooling at the time, right? So that was a detachment in itself, like just being able to recognize that just because you change gears, just because you decide one day this isn't in my highest to do anymore, what I had to face in that transition was the fear of, what does this mean? Does that mean that homeschooling them for those years was a mistake? Because if now I say that putting them in school is good, maybe I shoulda, woulda. And so what I've come to see is that living in the present is about making a decision now. When I made the decision to homeschool, it was the now of that time, and it was the best decision for us. It created harmony because I could get all the school work done in the morning when they were at their best. The afternoon was for relaxation. By the time Brian, my husband, would get home, it was harmony. I could have them involved in multiple extracurricular activities. It was never at night. It was during the day, so we had peaceful evenings. It worked for us. When it came time to put them in school, it was the right time. But again, I went through periods of resisting because change is not, for me, it was a hard thing to do, and I almost had to get to a breaking point to finally be like, no, I can't do this anymore, and then realize that change is a good thing. We evolve, our situations transmute to different needs, and we have to go with that. But your question was surrounding, right, giving as a mother. So I found that I would kind of go in and out of that way of thinking. So I just give, and not take care of myself. And I found that there was a lack of peace within the hearts of my children. And when I did take the time for myself and do what it takes, right now in our situation now, we have a nanny, but I never did for the first 6. So in my moments of doing the right balance thing was, let's say I had like 2 little ones under the age of 2. I hired a babysitter, a young babysitter, maybe even just 11 or 12, and I would stay in the home, and I would pay her the $4 or $5 an hour so that I could sleep. But I'm still there, because this is a lot of complaints of young moms with young children. I don't trust anyone. I don't have family in town. I never had family in town, but you create your family with people that are put in your life to assist you when needed. So being super mom, I'll do it all myself, there's no value in that at all. Nobody wins in that situation. So yes, you give of yourself when you're present with them, and then you make sure that you give to yourself what you need to stay balanced, because if we are abusive to ourselves, that's the message we're giving our children.
So true.
That they could do that to themselves, and that also impacts their way of treating you as a mom. Eventually they start losing respect, because that's the message you're giving them, is that you're not worthy of anything more.
Yes.
And so what I find right now is, even though I have a nanny, I'm still raising my children, because the 3 youngest are under the age of 4. And so I want to still be actively involved in their lives. But when I go for a shift where I'm doing massage for 4 hours, I come back completely in a different space. I am full of energy. I am happy. I feel rejuvenated. And I walk in, and they're beaming in a way that they never would be if I'm just haggard and being my devoted mom 24/7.
Yes.
It just really, it's such a pleasant thing for me to walk in and know that they're so happy, that they're not happier if they're always with me. That there's other people that are meant to be a part of their life. And for me, I hold very highly the role of our nanny in our lives and in our children's lives. She's I could do a whole show on her. And how grateful I am. Yeah, exactly. So
well, I'm really getting the sense of that, reaching out to a community and allowing for help, like breathing. So there's taking care of them and there's taking care of you, and finding a balance. Would that be what you're saying, basically, Carol? Absolutely. And I think with time too, you learn to establish inside of you of what's important, like what's the priority. Maybe, like I think when they're so little like this, there's so many projects I could be doing. I could be doing so much, but once they grow up, the projects, it's not like if I had time, I would do the projects, and there'd be no more projects to do. We all have a lifetime of projects. You finish one, and there's new ones that come up. So when I'm with them, I try to just be like fully present to being with them. And then if there's chaos, like you were talking, Jerry, about just feeling like overwhelmed with the house and where it's at, then when that becomes like a burden or a weight, then that is a priority, and that can be something that becomes important in doing, and at least bringing it to a place where you come in and you feel good, because it's a place where you're living. So even if that means what others may perceive as neglecting your children while you're getting that done or involving them in the process, but if it keeps coming up, for me, it seems like then that needs to be addressed. Right. But it's certainly, I would say, my standards of cleanliness or organization, and I mean, I was kind of neurotic, where I liked books to go from like shortest to tallest on a bookshelf, like neurotic clean, and like my house is quite orderly right now with the help of my nanny. Between the two of us, we can get it to look not too bad, but still I would have looked at that prior to having children as like messy. But it's lived in. Like I live in that house. It's not a show home. It's for people to come in and feel welcome and feel comfortable, and not feel like if they move a book out of place that you'll be
I know I get those houses where it's like, oh, I can't touch anything. Yeah, it's actually not comfortable. It doesn't feel like that safe space. So I think a little bit of, lived-in look, and it's a little alarming too to see somebody's house that's like completely organized and nothing, and they have like 3 kids. I'm thinking, okay, this is maybe not a good thing.
Well, and at the end of the day, we can only do what, because we all have different comfort levels of what feels right, and and that's all we can base it on is our own perception of what's comfortable for the family as a whole. Like, I know my husband's had to let go of a lot of stuff too, because he'd want things to just be unharmed. We have 6 boys, so I think that there's nicks on our basement walls, considering they play mini sticks down there, like hockey. It's going to get nicked. And so do we want a perfect house, or do we want children that are happy?
Yeah.
So it comes down to that. But, yeah, I think that fear is definitely something that's been a prominent emotion that I've been opening my heart to facing and seeing. And initially, I would say it wasn't of my own will to just start facing fear. It was beautiful life itself that just started in the last 5 years, bringing some life circumstances that would force me to just look at my own belief system within myself. And when I say belief system, it's not even necessarily what my parents taught me, because I can vouch, having 4 siblings, that we were all taught the same things, and yet all 5 of us perceived it differently according to our character, our temperament, our sensitivities. Our own perception is just unique. And so that's kind of neat as a parent, to be able to cut yourself a break, that you can only give what you know is best. And then what your child does with that is really not in your control, and even more than that, none of your business, because their journey is their journey. And we don't have a right to even choose that for them, right down to we might want to protect our children, but what if they're not supposed to live a pain-free life? Like, which one of us has had a pain-free life?
Oh, I still want to talk about that for just a second. Can I interrupt? Because I want to really, this one's really resonating. Right now I'm struggling with my son, because his entire life I have raced in to save him emotionally from his choices and from his, so for all intents and purposes, it's like I've been saying, I don't like this journey you've chosen for yourself. Let me race in and save you and offer you the opportunity for a better journey, by whose judgment? Mine, of course, right? And so in doing that, in coming to rescue him, it's suddenly, like, this has been a very humbling thing of this, oh my goodness, in my arrogance, although it was coming from a place of, parental desire to see my son thrive, I have in many respects emasculated him and removed his own opportunities to step into his own ability to solve his own problems, because I always race in and do it at the first sign of discomfort. And so that's really, when you talk about it's their journey and it's none of your business what they do with it, like, I so get it. Like, I agree, and it's a difficult thing for me at this moment of ascertaining or discerning the difference between my boundaries and his boundaries, and not implementing my will on his boundaries. That it's my job just to ascertain where mine are, and to allow him to empower him to recognize where his are. And that's where I've never really done a good job of allowing him to recognize where his boundaries are. I've been really busy making sure he knew where mine were.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very insightful.
A lot is coming up for me, is coming to me while you're talking. So many things are just like going through my mind. Holy. So, first of all, one thing just recently that I was faced with is just recognizing that I've put so much emphasis on, I wish I would have done that differently, and that was so, like, what if I had done that differently, and what? But as soon as you like introduce the words "what if," that's not living in the present moment. So what I'm trying to do now is to think of how I reacted to situations. Okay, that's how I reacted. Now I see it differently. Then look forward, look to the future, and handle it differently. If you see that you've recognized something that you're doing that could be done in a more optimal fashion, then great. And then leave, like, to put such heavy blame of I've emasculated my son, and that's heavy. I think that, like you said, you were doing it from your heart. At the time, that's the best you could do, that you were trying to protect him. That was your form of love. And so it's surprising sometimes what we perceive as like mistakes or having done things not right as a parent is exactly what they needed. Can you trust that that's possible? That sometimes even the things that we look back and say, I shouldn't have done it that way, that was still okay. That's what your child received, and now if you see it differently, then do it differently. So, for example, the other day, my 15-year-old, he's very animated, he's theatrical, he's funny, he's so entertaining, and he was vacuuming his bedroom with his 3-year-old brother on the bed, and he decided to take the power nozzle and use it as a monster. But it's still running, right? So he's like pretending the vacuum is attacking him, and my 3-year-old's laughing his head off because he's super entertained by that. But I overheard, and I heard my 3-year-old scream, and then I just envisioned that, okay, what's going on? I ran to the room, and he's got like the power bar, like just like full speed, close enough to his face. Of course, he's not in any danger. My 15-year-old knows his distance, but he's not realizing like what he's teaching the 3-year-old to be funny, and that. So in that moment, of course, fear kicked in as a mom, and I'm like, that has to be the stupidest idea I've ever witnessed in my life. I know you're trying to entertain him, but do you see how stupid that is? And of course, I'm teaching a wonderful word to my 3-year-old who's sitting right there. And I'm just crushing this 15-year-old who is just trying to entertain his brother. Like, he's not thinking beyond what's going on in that moment. And I just said to him, I'm just seeing him being the joker that he is too, taking that with his sister who's got long hair to her bum. And anyways, it was fear. I was just freaking out. And finally, I could tell he was so, his look on his face was just devastation, and just he felt horrible, and he felt like a failure too. So there was no awakened parenting going on in that moment. But later on, I sat with him at the table, and I was like, "Frick, I wish I had handled that so much better." But I just got so taken over by my fear. And I'm like, I'm doing this show on Monday, and I should just do the whole hour on telling them how of all the screw-ups I've done in my life as a parent.
What not to do.
So everyone, exactly. And
I feel so relieved right now, Carol, to hear that you're human like the rest of us.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I will do the rest of the show on that. Do you want to be entertained? So, anyways, he looked at me and he's like, "Oh, because they asked you to do this show because they think you're not human?" That's what he said to me.
Nice, yes.
So reminding me that, relax, so you weren't so awesome in that moment. But, I find that if I'm able to just, not get so, if in the moment it's the right thing to talk to him and to say, look, I could have handled that better, and make sure he understood what the message was, this of safety, and that from the perception of a 3-year-old, where his head is at and how he doesn't understand danger. But then letting it go, whereas for many years I would just hang on so much to all my screw-ups. And what that does, the message that gives my kids then is that they shouldn't screw up.
Yeah, see, I think that was awesome what you did. I think it's so important all these people that are striving to be these perfect parents. I'm like, stop. Make a mistake. It's really important to make a mistake, because how else are your kids going to learn? How do you get back up, and how do you recover, and how do you apologize, and that it is okay.
Exactly.
And yeah, because I actually know some people who they've never gotten married, and I don't think they ever will, because they have this perception that their opposite sex parent was perfect, and they'll never find that. No one can match that. No one can meet up to that, because they hid their flaws.
Right. Yeah, and that's a tough act to follow, because it's not real.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, and so going back to protecting our kids from hurting, whether it be physically or emotionally, making mistakes. I think that if we're just real with ourselves, it's at moments where we've really screwed up or gone through tough periods that we've learned the most. So to deprive our kids of that is just such an injustice to them. And I remember when I was still homeschooling, I was able to take my older two boys. They were really into snowboarding, and I had the flexibility to just drop them off, because they were quite they were 14 and 12 and mature for their age, so they could just go for the afternoon at COP here in Calgary, and they'd go snowboarding, and it was great for months and months and months. And then we found out at one point that they had blended with a group, and they smoked marijuana. 14 and 12, right? And I was like, wow, just when you think you're kind of like, some people even homeschool to shelter their children, which makes me laugh out loud, because especially in a city, if you're in the middle of Booneyville, in the middle of a field, maybe you could shelter them there, and then good luck with them surviving as adults in the world. But when you're in the city, there's just no way you could be homeschooling to shelter them, because life presents opportunities, and I could name another one after this. But so when we found out, we could either flip out about them having been in that situation, or so that one was I'm happy we were calm about it, because it then would define how they would communicate with us in the future. And so it just opened up such an amazing conversation on that we had before on drugs and peer pressure, et cetera, but you'd be amazed until they really live it, how much more impacting it is on them. So what I'm saying is that if I had sheltered them and never let them be unsupervised, that would have never happened. But the beauty is it happened when they were 12 and 14, and they actually still cared what we think. They're actually still at an age where they're open to hearing their parents' thoughts, where they'll sit with us at the internet and we'll show them pictures of people that have been on meth and what it's done to their lives, to their bodies, to their health, to their souls. And they listen and they trust, and it impacts and stays with them. And so, whereas if they had their first time when they were 16, they would have been like, yeah, whatever, Mom, I don't need to hear your thoughts, which is normal, because when you're an adolescent, you're slowly breaking away from the umbilical cord, from being dependent on adults. If they weren't that way, I'd be more concerned. If they're always like, Mom, what do you think? Dad, what do you think? What should I do? Well, that shows a lack of confidence in themselves to make decisions, whether they be good or not from our perspective is really irrelevant. It's decisions on their own, nevertheless. So that would be an example of where protecting them would have been more harmful, that it was actually more effective for them to be in that bad situation, if you want to call it that. And then give them strength later when they're faced with it again. But even at that, I can't choose with 8 children who's going to go down that road and who won't. You could teach them every detail of how to not make choices that could harm their well-being, but I don't know. From my view, I don't even know if 15 is too old or 14 is more appropriate. But whatever you teach them prior to that age, that stays with them forever. Anything after that is nothing. Like you can't give them much more after 14 or 15, except love and support. That's it.
So
the
at that point, you released yourself as I don't even know. Are you even a guide then, or just more of a support?
Yeah, well, as a primary influence, I would say.
Okay.
You're maybe a primary influence when they're younger, but there comes an age where they seek elsewhere, and that's okay. That's normal, and then you're there to help them when they fall, to help them back up, to be like, oh, that sucks that you had to experience that, and support them and still give them information, but
right.
That's
I love
like
your perspective.
Our 16-year-old kind of for the last, 17. He's going to be 18 in September. But when he was 16, he kind of just took a year and a bit of just going into a bit of a dormant state, I would say. He's always been a intuitive, sensitive individual. He could come in, walk in our home after school, and he would know right away that I've been crying, even if like physically it didn't look like it, but he said, what's wrong, and tell me right now. And he just is so perceptive, just picks up on energy. And for about a year and a bit, he just went dormant, like just he's physically there, but nobody's home kind of thing.
Oh, wow.
And of course, it reflected in his marks, and initially I was like, is he getting into something? But no, I would like do enough digging, and then of course I've got my FBI 15-year-old brother. he would clue me in, and he'd say, oh no, Mom, if you knew the situations he's been in, and the temptations he's had, and the offers he's had, and and what he's stood up and said no to, he's my hero. I wish I could be as strong as he has been up to now, kind of thing. So that was kind of like cluing me in that it wasn't okay. He's gotten into something, and just his marks started going down, and we'd have chats with him more like, okay, is this where you want it to be? Are you happy? And the initial reaction, maybe a little bit more for my husband, but he'd be like, no, it's like I want him to be successful. I want him to do well. I want him to have good marks. And we had to sit down and really have like a real conversation between the two of us of how we define like our role as a parent when it comes to those kind of things when they're at that age. And we could put down rules and consequences if you don't get this mark, or if you get this mark, you'll get paid. For me, that just doesn't resonate, because I feel like if they succeed, it should, if they do the best that they can do, should be because that's what they want for themselves.
Right. What's the definition of success anyway?
And that was my question to him. And he said, well, it'd be like I'd want him to have everything he wants. Like he likes nice things, and so he needs a good job that pays well to have those nice things. And I'm like, okay, but that's his choice. Like we can't choose his path. Like anyways, he really was able to come to a place where we were both comfortable with supporting him, encouraging him, reminding him if he looks like he's getting off track, or even assisting if he has tendencies towards addiction, for example, of gaming. Well, out of love, we could say, hey, do you want help? Because we can put restrictions on our computer so that only during certain hours you have access to those games. But with him, not like, I noticed you've been on too long. From now on, we're going to block this game, and we're going to block, like where we set down the rules. Like I really feel like it's cooperative parenting when they get to that age.
Yes, most definitely. I love that. Make sure that they're involved in, like even when there's a consequence, I feel like a consequence is needed. It's like, okay, so what do you think would be appropriate here? And are you seeing this as a problem? And getting their input, because often they'll they'll hand down much more harsh consequences than I ever would have thought.
I completely have seen that firsthand, for sure. I've seen that time and time again. So, and it's more appropriate. Like, I've always was so stumped with thinking, what's a consequence that's related to the action? And I'd so often just not be able to come up with something, and yet they could. So that's the answer, is just ask them. They usually know exactly what they need to help them be the best that they can be, because ultimately they could on the outside be showing like they don't care and they are so indifferent, but deep down they want their own happiness too. We all do want that for ourselves. So
Carol, what would you suggest when you ask your kids? Have you ever had that where they are now at a point where they're so shut down that the answer is, well, what do you think, or what do you want, or what makes you happy? And answer to absolutely every one of those questions is, I don't know. What would you suggest there in that case?
In the case of my son, because he went from being so perceptive and so aware and so attentive to energy, and then is like just this, I would say, a zombie. Like, it actually felt like it was a zombie in my home. And the only place I felt comfortable with treating him was just love him exactly the way he is right here, right now. That's all I could come up with that felt right for me, and so I did that. I loved him, even if he wasn't like really lovable in a lot of ways.
Yes.
But to me, that defines real love, is when you can love someone that's not giving it back, like just you're not receiving. And he just, the weirdest thing, he just snapped out of it like about 3 weeks ago. He just, boom, woke up one day and it's him again. It's totally him again. I was just, and I think that's again an area where it was none of my business to decide when that would happen for him. And I know so many, I know that there's adults out there that are still like that. They're in their 40s and they're just going through the motions of life. So in essence, like zombie state. And so I was looking at him and thinking, I would have wanted to just do, as I'm awakening, influence my children to awaken or stay awake, because they're awake when they're young, and then you go dormant, right? You forget who you are. And as I'm remembering at 40 who I am, who I was, who I came here to be, bit by bit, I was like, and I've heard you guys say this before, and others, wouldn't it be cool if we could teach our kids to stay awake? But yeah, ideally that's awesome. But what if that's not their journey? What if they're meant to go in dormant states for a period of time and then wake up when they're 25 or 30 or 35? Like, nobody chose that for me, that it would be 40. Do I resent my parents that they didn't give me more to make sure I'd stay awake and stayed in tune and enlightened and as I was when I was 8? Could I blame them? Absolutely not. They gave me everything they had, and then the path I was meant to have is the path I've had. And I think we can all look back, as crappy as stages we might have gone through, and think, I would never change it. I would never want it to be any different. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. I've been guided and supported even when I was not living in my highest. I was still guided and supported and loved by beings of light that surround us, either as human beings or as others, and it's exactly the way it should be. And to watch our children go through that is like normal, that we feel like a sense of sadness, but to just abandon ourselves to the idea that the only thing that's in our control is how we love them, and to love them in the present moment to the highest ability that we have in that moment. And that varies from one day to the next. Like, there's some days where my highest level of love is to say, you know what, you need to go to your room right now and play quiet in there, because I know that I'm edgy and that having that child in my space is not in their best interest. There's so much to take into consideration, the kind of night you had, hormonally where you're at. But that's maybe like the lower level of love, or the farther from love, would be to force or to have the child there so I could like take out my frustrations on the child. So on the outside, it might not look very loving to say, go to your room right now. I need space. When, in fact, that was the highest level of love. Then another day you wake up, you're on top of the world, you're like beaming, effortless to love and to be accepting of whatever comes your way. I can't believe for a second that that's more loving than the other day where that's the best you could do, is just separate yourself from your child.
Yeah.
So we have to have compassion. We have to continuously remember to have compassion for ourselves and where we're at and what we're dealing with and things we're trying to figure out. I mean, we're like in the middle of parenting and awakening, if you want to call it that, trying to figure out who we are, remembering who we are. There's so much coming up, and we're going to be like the books tell us to be like, honey, I know you're frustrated right now, but just da-da-da-da-da. You're not always going to be that way. In fact, I read some of those books sometimes, and I'm like, I feel more discouraged because it makes me realize how it brings to light. That's how I felt sometimes when I've read books where I'd be like, oh my gosh, like I can't measure up to this. I can't be all of that. And then, of course, the common sense is that these beautiful authors are there to show a multitude of examples and ideas of what works really well. And so when we read these books, we really have to pick and choose what works for us and let go of the rest.
Yes, that's so key. Well, yeah, you and I were talking about that before the call, even just that, when you were saying, well, yeah, I could give them a list of what not to do. I'm like, how, perfect, right? We want to know you're human. We want to know you've struggled. Like, I'm not very receptive to learning to some, perfect, or learning from some perfect parent or, someone who's pretending to be perfect or whatever, because I don't feel like they understand where I'm at. And so, yeah, I want to hear about the struggle. I want to hear about the challenges and the screw-ups and, and how do you recover, and what if you don't realize until years later? Then what? Then you can't have that conversation. Or can you?
Right. Well, what's really interesting, I'm happy you bring that up, because about 2 weeks ago I was feeling inside of me like, man, I have changed so much from when I raised my first 4 children to now raising, well, all 8, I guess, because I'm still raising the 4 oldest. But, those real fundamental foundation years, like 0 to 5 and a little bit beyond. And I was thinking, I can't even remember what belief systems or what rules and what this is right, this is wrong I taught my first 4, because it feels like eons ago. And I've changed and evolved so much as a person that I know I'm so different in so many ways of my ways of thinking of that I was as a new mom. Plus, until the last 5 years I've changed dramatically in so many ways. And so my approach now with my 4 youngest is like day and night from what it was for my first 4. And so inside I just started asking God, the universe, source, whatever a person wants to call, to show me in some way, because how can I start picking away at my 2 oldest boys' brains and being like, so when you were 4 years old and we were talking about what do you remember me teaching you and what's your belief on this and that? So I threw it out there and I just said, higher levels, take control and show me. And 2 weeks later, my son, I picked him up from work, and he gets into the van and he's like, Mom, I'm questioning everything you ever taught me. And we started this unbelievable conversation about faith, about right and wrong, about unbelievable. Like, and we happened to have to pick up my 15-year-old from his friends on the way home. And we sat in the van for an hour and a half nonstop. We touched on because it was coming from him. He completely opened up his mind and his heart to me and said, here, I'm showing you. This is what you taught me. It's not resonating with me at all. Let's find a common ground, because it's just, it's unbelievable. I couldn't believe how powerful that moment was. I asked and it came, and it was so beautiful. It just made me trust even more that if you just believe, it'll come. It'll just come. Exactly what you need will come. And we were able to just have this conversation that will bring up so many more conversations in the future. And he gave me insight on his perspective, which shapes my own way of thinking, because he has so much, they both do have so much wisdom inside of them. And the basic message that I ended the conversation with was, you're going to have people teaching you your entire life. And so what happens when two people you totally love and totally trust have opposing ideas or opinions on something? There comes a time where you have to find the truth within you, and you have to trust that more than anything else. And go with it and don't look back.
Yeah, that's so hard for so many people, and for me that was really difficult, because I was just so used to doing what I was told, and I turned into this total people pleaser, realizing it wasn't safe to be me and to express myself, and so to learn how to think for myself and make decisions. And I mean, I remember just how difficult that was, and people saying, Desiree kind of expressed, like, was saying, so what do you do with kids that, or even adults, right, that everything is I don't know, like I can't make this decision, like I always wanted to ask, what do you think? And it was just this constant thing. And so I had these coaches that started to ask me, well, if you did know, what would the answer be? And I thought, this is the most irritating question ever. I don't know. I said I don't know. But now I use that question. Well, if you did know, what would it be? And and if you did care, people would ask me which restaurant I wanted to go to, and again, it was like, well, whatever you want, right? And it's like, well, if you did have a preference, what would your preference be? And I just had to start practicing making a decision, even when I didn't think I cared. I'd still go, okay, well, let's go here, just to make that decision, just to say, I did it.
Right.
But do you have any advice around that, like how to kind of break out of that, the people pleaser, the I don't know, or
Yeah, I got a couple of those in the gang too. So that was probably one of my bigger challenges, is that character, because it's so foreign to me. I'm not really a people pleaser in that way. Like I always I did ruffle feathers. I did shake trees, and maybe, there's a few people I became a people pleaser towards in my life, like people that really mattered, and maybe I was scared it would trouble the relationship if I wasn't people pleasing those individuals. But in general, so when I see some of my kids that are more like that, I was always like, I'll send those to my husband, because it's more his personality. But I love your thoughts there, Jerry, of just like poking deeper and saying, if you did have a choice, what would it be? And beyond that, I don't know, because at the end of the day, that's like my 12-year-old daughter can tend to be that way sometimes. Like mostly the people she loves and she's close to, she'll compromise her own thoughts and opinions just to keep the peace. But I haven't really figured out a way, and I don't necessarily put that pressure on myself as a parent either. Like, I've come to realize that there's certain personalities that I really get through to, because I get it. Like my second, the more controversial and like talking back and pushing buttons, and I get through to him because I'm able to look at him and go, look, I get it, because I'm like that. I'm impulsive with my words, and I can explode, and so I know how it feels to be in your shoes, and I know in your heart you don't even mean what you're saying. You still love your brother or your sister, but it's just coming out that way. And so I can sit with him and tell him what works and what doesn't work for me. I've tried this. When I feel it, like the anger stirring up inside of me, like I'll give him clues on separate yourself or breathe or whatever it is. And he believes it because he knows I'm like that. But for me to give advice to my daughter is just not credible because she knows I'm not like that. So that's where I have to really let go of not feeling responsible for every single aspect of the personalities of my children, that there's some of them that I can get, and so I can help more with their things, and the other ones that I don't necessarily like get that personality, then my contribution is just loving them the way they are and trusting that someone else will be in their life and guide them through that.
Or asking the higher powers like you did before, just, okay, show me because I'm kind of at a loss here, surrender it.
Yeah, I could do that, but at the end of the day, I've come to a place where I don't feel like there is such a thing as putting too much pressure on yourself as a parent, of feeling like you can assist your children in every single aspect of their life. I don't believe that at all. And that goes back to the beginning of the conversation where I said parenting is a group. It involves more than two people.
Yeah,
and
that is so key to remember. Wow.
Like her godmother in particular is my sister, and my sister and I have very different personalities. So I already had a conversation with her a few years ago where I said, one of these summers when we totally don't resonate, my daughter and I'm going to be sending her over to you for the summer, and you will be her confidant, and I know you will be exactly what she needs. And so sometimes it can be tempting to think as a parent that we're the best fit for our children. And I think that's a slippery slope to get on, because I think it's arrogant to begin with, and it's not accepting that it's a lot of people are contributing to this child, to this soul's shaping and growth, and it's not all about me doing it. And so, and even accepting that I click with some of my kids and some of them not so much. Coming at peace with that doesn't mean I don't love them, but some of them we get each other, we like resonate, and like you said, you feel like you're soulmates. But some of them I love their company, but I don't have that. It to me doesn't lessen the love I have for them, though. It might make some people feel uncomfortable to hear that, but that's my truth. It does not.
I'm relieved to hear it, actually.
Me too. I was thinking the same thing. Oh, it's okay not to click with my kids. Woohoo!
Well, it's because we do, right? We put such a huge burden to, be the perfect parent who's you're doing everything all the time. And by the way, you better look smoking hot and have this fabulous career, and your house better be good, and your supper better be great, and every last one of your kids better have an awesome day every day.
Yeah, no pressure there.
Yeah, no pressure. So that's where that compassion comes in, and I love the fact that you're willing to say something that might be uncomfortable, to offer a point of view that might be provocative, because we need those different perceptions so that we can come from a compassionate place where we can allow for other ideas. As long, for me, it's been like, how can I best show up for my children? How can I best serve them? And sometimes the answer to that is by not doing it, by fostering that out, or by asking for assistance from outside sources, whether it's the other parent, or it's family friends, or it's the nanny, or it's just, I'm going to go put myself in my room because I'm going to lose my shit if I don't, right?
Exactly.
It needs to be that willingness to look at maybe unconventional things that we haven't really explored or that we only whisper about in the corners and we don't want to say out loud, like, I don't get my kids. Or maybe, you know, some of them I get and some of them I don't. I mean, that's such a brave and vulnerable thing to say, and I'm just, thank you for your honesty on that one, Carol.
Well, I could get more honest. My second, I bring him up a lot because I really feel like he's 15, and up to now he's definitely taught me the most. But there are periods of time where I couldn't even, like, it was just difficult being in his space because of, now I understand that it was because he was such a huge trigger for areas that I needed to look within myself. And so who enjoys that kind of teacher? Well, I didn't. I just wanted to hide
we all have relationships
that,
like that. Whether you have kids or not, I think a lot of people could relate to those people.
Oh my gosh! Like there were times I would actually have dreams at night of biting his arm. Like I would actually feel the flesh in my mouth. It's so horrible. But I've even told him about it now, and we just laugh our heads off. But we're so tight now. Like, that's the cool thing. Like, we're so tight. I feel so close to him to the extreme of how I felt like, oh, my gosh, if anyone wants him, they can have him because I'm done this learning curve. Like, it was just, but I didn't see it that way at the time. I just thought, like, he's not learning from me, and then frustration kicks in. I'm a bad parent. I'm screwing up. I haven't read enough books. I hardcore read all the parenting books. Now I refuse to read any. You know, there's some good stuff out there. I don't discourage people from reading, but first and foremost is tapping into yourself, and in that moment, what's in the highest. And sometimes in the highest it doesn't look pretty, but it's the best you could do at that time, and just forgiving yourself, having compassion. And I'll give you one scenario that my kids keep reminding me about. I don't know if they'll ever fully understand what occurred in that moment until they're parents themselves, but I was in the kitchen. It had just been like a horrific week or weeks or months. I don't know. It can just get very challenging at times. And he was again, my lovely Philip was helping doing the dishes, and he likes to be efficient, so he was carrying a multitude of things that he should have had half of the amount of stuff he had. And one of the items was 4 or 5 liter jug of juice, homemade juice from concentrate that's stickier than glue when you have to clean that stuff up. Anyways, he went, as he's holding a ton of stuff in one arm, he went to reach up. He was probably 10, I would say. Reach up in the fridge to put it up on the shelf, and he dropped it, and the jug broke. There was this massive gaping hole, so all the juices glue, 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 glue under the fridge, all over the kitchen floor. And I just, in that moment, I could just flip out at him or just flip out, and I chose number 2. So I took the jug, flip out, lose my mind. It was, my other son was in the living room, younger, maybe 5 or 6 at the time. And I took the remainder of the juice. There was probably 3 or 4 liters left that hadn't fallen out. And I just proceeded to vigorously shake the rest of the juice out of the jug all over my hair, my clothes, the walls, the kitchen sink, and him, because he's standing beside me. And I was singing as I was doing it. I was envisioning myself as a little girl in a sprinkler. I closed my eyes. It was totally a crazy moment. My younger son was across the living room, and he stands up. He says, "Mom, what are you doing?" Kind of scared. And then I just burst out laughing. I'm what I'm doing is I'm going up to shower now. And I went upstairs and I showered. And in the shower, I was just laughing hysterically because I was I can't believe I just did that. But it was to divert me from freaking out on him and telling him words that I would have regretted. But, wow. Someone on the outside could have been watching that and say, okay, she flipped a switch. But it doesn't matter at the end of the day. You do what works in the moment. And then we cleaned up together, and he was petrified that I was coming down to take a strip off of him, but I didn't, because I got it out of my system by being an absolute lunatic and playing in the sprinkler of juice. But it's something we can now laugh about and just definitely.
One of those stories that's going to stick with them forever and be passed on from generation to generation. Their wacky grandmother.
Exactly. Yay, lucky me. And now I've just shared it with you guys. So it's
Thank you. That's awesome. I love it.
No, it's all good. I think that just we have to give ourselves a break and just try to just accept that it's not always going to be picture perfect, but it prepares them for real life and all scenarios. And when I was pregnant with the twins, I was highly hormonal, so there was just volatile is an understatement. And so they witnessed stuff, but it's real life. Like, they will choose to get married or not one day. They'll have relationships, and they'll just see this is what it's all about. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it as a parent. I think that's so sad when parents can try to live behind this image of perfection. It just makes you so unreachable. Like, my kids come to me for anything and everything because they know I would never judge them. Because they've seen me dance in a sprinkler of juice.
Yeah. Well, and you got to keep a sense of humor. I think that's so key. And I have to say, you really are one of the least judgmental people I know. Like, you are beautiful that way. And I can't thank you enough. I can't believe we're out of time already. Oh yeah, there's so much more I want to talk about.
Well,
but, what an awesome. What was it now? Almost 90 minutes that we've spent together.
Yep.
Can't thank you enough. Lots of goodies in here. I have to go back and listen, and I'm so grateful for you and for you spending this time with us and how honest and open you've been with everything. And I think you're doing an amazing job and an awesome role model for your children.
Well, I'm grateful to have had this conversation with you, because every time I'm able to just have these kind of real conversations, it's such a reminder for myself, and I'm able to just be like, oh yeah, right. So like 10 minutes ago before the call, you could have shown more compassion for yourself. And so learning to love me and ask myself the question, would you ever talk to anyone else that way, the way you talk to yourself in your mind? And a lot of times it's no. I would never be that cruel to anyone else. And if I can slowly start breaking those patterns of criticism within me, I think that's the best example I could show my kids. Because even if I speak to my kids and say, it's okay, don't worry about it. Everybody makes mistakes. This is the most interesting thing I've seen in my experience as a mom, is I could be patient and do it by the book with them, but then when I screw up and I'm beating myself up about it in front of them, then everything I said to them about it's okay, everybody makes mistakes, is out the door.
Wow.
It's completely out the door. So that's where at one point I started wondering, why are they so scared to tell me they've screwed up, or I've never been mad at them when they come to me when I find out they've done something wrong. I'm patient, and now I get it. It's actually because they see me in the way I react to me making mistakes. Wow. I shouldn't have done that. I'm such a bad mom. I wish I'd just go on and on and on about it, and it would be so much more powerful if I just said, you know what, I screwed up. Mom screwed up. I didn't speak to you as loving as I could have. But right now, I'm able to speak to you with love, and that's what matters. And you know what I mean? Like being able to teach them to let it go. I have trouble letting it go a lot of times, and so that's the message they're hearing way more than my words of, it's okay, everybody makes mistakes, don't worry about it.
Whew, big aha for me. What an amazing way to end the show. Thank you. Yes.
You're welcome. I actually, I think I just had the aha moment myself. I'm going to be honest.
Simultaneous aha.
As it came out of my mouth, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's incredible. That's why. Wow. Well, thank you, ladies, for allowing me to be a part of this show and just be able to walk away feeling like, wow, thanks to you guys, thanks to this exchange, we can just walk away and be all that we can be, and that's it. Nothing more, nothing less.
Thank you so much, Carol.
Absolutely. Wow. Whew. So grateful for both of you ladies. Thank you so much. What a juicy show.
Thank you.
Just want to, wow. And I just want to thank all of our listeners, and we love and appreciate you so much, and we can feel your energy. And, thanks for tuning in, and make sure you get in touch with us. Carol, how can they get in touch with you if they want to chat some more?
I guess Facebook is a good place to start. It's an easy way to find me. I'm Carol Forrest Lewitzky, so just look me up and friend me and tell me that you heard me speak on the show so I know where you're coming from, and I would love to make a connection.
Awesome.
Yay, thank you again. It's so awesome. I'm going to go and get my truck out of Hawk here at the dealership.
Go get your truck, Desiree.
Thanks again so much for sharing all of that wisdom and your time with us, Carol. Like, really, I love you and your energy and your perspectives really resonate, and I just, a lot of gratitude there, so thank you.
You're very welcome. A lot of gratitude from me, too. I'm just very blessed to know you both.
Cool. All right. Bye, ladies. Bye, listeners.
Okay. Have a great day.
Thanks. You too.